what do you think of the game overall?
Wild. It was wild. I got worried for a moment. I'm not going to lie. It was like, oh no, we almost lost. But then that Ryan Williams touchdown, man, that was awesome.
I don't know if it's an overstatement, but I feel like Ryan Williams might be the best receiver in college football.
I tweeted he's the best receiver in the SEC.
I tweeted on X. I still say Twitter, but X, that he's the best receiver in college football. And I mean, some people are disagreeing. I get that, but it might just be overreaction on my part. Might be an overreaction, but I mean, the move he made, the spin move to go around that guy, and then he spin around again. And then the stiff arm, and he's 175 pounds, and he's 17 years old. It's unreal. I love watching him. He's a fantastic player at such a young age. And even though I was nervous and I thought Alabama was going to lose for a second there, I'm glad the game ended up being like this instead of just a blowout. I preferred this because it was such an entertaining game.
So let's go ahead and go back to the beginning because so Bama comes out and punches them in the mouth right away. Milroe was unbelievable in that first quarter. Is that the best quarter of football Jalen Milroe has ever played?
Yeah.
I would have to say I agree.
Considering the stage, the opponent, like I still think Georgia's a really good football team. And obviously, even when they were getting blown out, people are like, oh, they still got to go to Austin. And they got to play Ole Miss. That's not as imposing as it was.
Yeah, Ole Miss, they're not going to win the big games. They're basically the Penn State of the SEC.
Yeah. But like, is Georgia in trouble? And then obviously at the end, everyone's like, oh, Georgia's fine. But I was like, they're still going to be like top 6, 7. But Alabama comes out, punches them in the mouth, makes first overall pick projected Carson Beck look like freaking insert quarterback here. It makes him look like, God bless him, but like Blake Barnett and some of these other Alabama quarterbacks that have gotten benched. David Crowell, he just looked terrible. And credit to him, man. You're on the road in that environment. You go down 28-0, and he fought. And so credit to Georgia for that. They did take a lead with 2 minutes left. But that first quarter, maybe the best quarter of Alabama football in a long time. Did it surprise you? Because when Saban was here, Alabama was very businesslike. Sort of, and the comment, and Herb Street and Fowler talked about this too. Bama was very businesslike. They came out, and Georgia was that way tonight. Bama was very loose. They played very emotional. Did that surprise you guys?
I mean, it's an interesting question for sure because it's totally different now. The vibe is different now with Kalen DeBoer because he's not Nick Saban. I mean, there's still some elements there, but it's not the same. I mean, to be honest, I just was shocked to see them punch Georgia in the mouth the way that they did. I would have never have thought that they would have been up 28-0. Just insane how that happened. But like you said, the emotions, yes, Nick Saban always had them more even kill. Like they were not gonna, no matter what happened, never too high, never too low. But like Jalen Hurts, I'll never forget. Like Jalen Hurts, his expression never changed, like ever at any point. Even when they did good, it never changed. Yes, it's different now. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing as long as you can keep it under control and not let it affect you when adversity strikes.
Not to get too ahead of myself or too ahead into the game. Part of me does wonder if that's maybe what happened, is that they had so much emotion. They played so well. You can't sustain that for 4 quarters, especially against Georgia. And maybe that's how Georgia got back into the game. And Georgia's a really good football team, obviously. Jackson, Jackson and I were DMing on Twitter. I DM'd Jackson. I was just like, oh my God. And Jackson's like, oh, they're making our lives easy. And I was getting happy because I was like, oh man, this game's going to be over quick. Let's just run out this clock. Let's get out of here. This would be a nice, fun win to talk about. And, obviously not the case. But Jackson, what do you think of that first quarter, first half? That was unbelievable football from the Crimson Tide.
Well, it was like Jeffrey said, nobody really expected it to happen. I mean, nobody thought they were going to be waking up on Saturday morning thinking Alabama's going to dominate Georgia 28-0. No one's really thinking that. I mean, nobody was thinking Kentucky would upset Ole Miss, let alone Alabama dominating Georgia. That was just not happening. Nobody was really thinking about that. But, of course, a lot of people talked about Kirby Smart's losing record against Alabama. And, there were some people just kind of like, oh, he can't win. And, everybody was wondering, can Kalen Bohr and the Crimson Tide get it done? Well, it was looking that way. Second half, looking like we were going to blow it. But then in the fourth quarter, we saved the day. Milroe and Williams, my God. I mean, a boy has became a man tonight. That's Ryan Williams for you in a nutshell.
That was just an absurd catch. And we'll get to that. But first 4 drives, 8 plays, 70 yards, 6 plays, 84 yards. They get a pick off Carson Beck, 3 plays, 22 yards, 6 plays. Like, they had one short drive field, but the other ones, they drove the field against a Georgia defense loaded with NFL guys. They found a lot of success on the edges, especially with Milroe. Even in the intermediate game, this was Jalen Milroe's best game, at least in the first half. We can talk about the second half. I thought, and Jackson, you've watched, even in the blowouts, Western Kentucky, even Wisconsin a little bit, and especially South Florida, the secondary had dudes running wide open.
Yeah.
And just Byron Brown couldn't hit them, and TJ Finley, because they're not very good quarterbacks. For the first half, and we're still at the first half, people, we'll talk about the second half. I thought the Bama secondary was outstanding.
Yeah.
I thought they were outstanding. I mean, all over the place. They were where they were supposed to be. They were aggressive. They weren't forcing DPIs. Georgia had, 3 offensive pass interference?
Yeah.
One on the Lovett. One was a pick play. I don't remember the third.
Georgia kept pushing off all game.
Yeah. Yeah, and you maybe on that last big play before they scored, you could have called one, but I'm okay with them not calling it there. That's fine. But, yeah, I thought the Bama defense was unbelievable. They were flying around, got a couple picks, forced a fumble. But, yeah, defensively, what did you see in the first half? I mean, was the first half of that game just perfect football?
Perfect football, no doubt.
I mean, you can't really get much better than that, especially against a team as good as Georgia is. I mean, it'd be different if you're playing, like South Florida. Like, that's what you would have thought Alabama would have done against South Florida, right? Just blow the doors off of them from the get-go. Did not happen the last 2 years, but more surprising this year because Milroe actually played.
Yeah, it was just
in the game, but yes, for the preseason. Sorry I cut out there, but yeah, I mean, against a team that good, yeah, that's about as perfect as you can get.
I know there's a lot of hype. Obviously, Saban retiring, and it is a huge deal. We're college football dorks here. You watching are college football dorks, so you know this. I think millions of people tonight learned that a coach, if you take away COVID, that's 104-9 can coach some ball. DeBoer knows what he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
He knows what he's doing. I mean, he took Washington. Washington went 4-8, and we're in the national championship 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And the magic he did at Fresno State and Sioux Falls. I mean, the guy has been
the offensive coordinator of Indiana.
Exactly. You don't see anybody getting hired off from Indiana every day, but
these dudes can coach ball. There's something to be said with just guys and you see it with Cignetti at Indiana and some of these other guys. You just get yourself a damn good ball coach and you figure everything else out later. And Alabama's too big to fail at recruiting, so I'm sure it'll be fine there. I know that was the huge concern. Kalen DeBoer, man, you have to be excited for what's coming up. And the next game for Alabama, next real game is October 19th. They go to Knoxville. I'm sure that'll be another great atmosphere, great time. But another thing I wanted to talk about tonight, just kind of as we kind of break down early in the game, a lot of people have talked about this, that Bryant Denny, kind of like Ohio State, is intimidating, but it's not like a crazy crowd. It's more like an NFL crowd. It's huge, but it doesn't ever get loud. and it may have been, I forget who it was, but he's like, unless Alabama feels threatened. LSU in 2019. There's been some other times. That's the one that immediately comes to mind. That place gets to another level, and it actually becomes like a Tiger Stadium or Penn State, where every game routinely it's just crazy in a madhouse. Georgia walked into a hornet's nest. That was a crazy crowd tonight. And good on you, Alabama fans.
Well, prior to tonight, Georgia was 2-8 throughout their 10 trips in Tuscaloosa. The only 2 wins were in 2007 on ESPN September 23rd, and in October 2020, October 2002 under Mark Richt in his second year.
Yeah. But under Saban, and Saban complained about this routinely. The students are leaving at halftime of SEC games. This is ridiculous. It's like, yeah, Nick, because you're up 30-0 and they want to go party because you're blowing everybody out. Rarely do Alabama fans feel threatened. Teams could come in there and play close games like South Florida just did. There are other examples. Tonight, that crowd felt threatened, and that place was electric.
Yeah, I do agree with your statement, though, Zach, and the fact that some stadiums set themselves apart with their fans based off the fact that every game. I mean, like Nebraska, everyone says they're like the ultimate fan base because they've been horrible for so long, and they still sell it out. They still support the team. And yes, Alabama, the fans support the team. They're selling out all the time. It's full, but it's not as loud as it could be. And and like you said, if they blow a team out, they leave a lot of them, especially the students. And I know why, like you said, party and stuff, but you're not truly supporting the team all the way through, though.
And to be fair, this isn't just an Alabama problem. Ohio State has this problem. They're the main ones I'm thinking of, but there are other places that have this issue where fans do come. It's just not a crazy environment. It's more laid back. Texas has this problem. OU can kind of have this problem unless they feel.
Just give everybody free beer and it's all taken care of. Yeah, kind of like Cow and Chick, where it's like free trailer.
When Alabama went to Texas a few years ago, I was stunned at how crazy that crowd was because Texas is like the ultimate. This is an NFL crowd. It's loud, but it's not. It's 100,000 people here.
I still can't believe Alabama won that game.
That's the main one I'm thinking of like an NFL type crowd. Where it came alive and was a college crowd. Like Texas has that, OU has that. That Bama crowd was outstanding tonight, and they made a huge impact in the first half. Georgia's used to everywhere they go is a crazy crowd. They go to, they don't go to Florida, obviously, but they go to Tennessee. They go to South Carolina. There's going to be crazy crowds. They're used to that. They were shook in the first half by that Bryant-Denny crowd. So good on you, Alabama fans.
I'm glad they helped the team out and supported them all the way through. And when they got, like you said, threatened, they really upped the ante. I mean, it was loud. I wish I was there. I wish I was at the game. That's how good. The thing is, and I do this all the time. When I'm watching a game on TV, even if I'm not a fan of a team, I'm a fan of Alabama or a fan of Indiana or North Carolina or some teams that I like. Even if it's Penn State, doesn't matter who it is. I want to be there when it's a really big game and that atmosphere is rolling. You just want to experience it. I've been to some games, but nothing that crazy. That is just
I'm in my apartment, and you can see my one movie poster fell down. It's an Indiana Jones poster. I'm in my apartment, and we'll talk about it, but I'm just here with my couple friends, and we're getting up off our couch when Ryan Williams scored that touchdown. We're like, oh my God.
That's exactly my reaction.
I was like, oh my God, I'm going to wake my neighbors up. But I was like, oh my God, that's incredible. There's still, we're not going to go into it. I still don't like the 12-team playoff. I don't like.
I've talked with Mark at length about that.
Yeah. We don't need to go into it. I don't like a lot of the conference expansion and all this stuff and realignment. A lot of this stuff still drives me nuts. These are the kind of games where even with the 12-team playoff, you're like, oh, they don't matter as much. You tell that to the fans, tell that to the kids, tell that to the people watching, man, because that was electric. This is why we love the sport, is these kind of games. These kind of games are more fun to me than the national championship, anything like that. That was just – there's something to be said for two iconic brands the last two, like Georgia, I wouldn't qualify as a dynasty yet because it's only been really 3-4 years. Arguably, they could have won an Natty last year if Bama doesn't beat them in the SEC championship. But it's only been like the last 2-3 years where they've really become, what everyone kind of thought Georgia could always be under like Mark Richt and whatever, like just a machine. And then Bama's obviously, the Saban dynasty, and we'll see what happens moving forward. There's just something to be said, man, when two teams like that match up. Like USC Michigan last week was a freaking outstanding football game. Yeah. And this is why we watch. There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, and momentum is also another thing that is.
We'll get to momentum.
Yeah, I didn't know
a lot of it
segment, but I mean, momentum is such a thing in college football. I feel like it's more so than in any sport, like major sport, because you see the crowd. I mean, just everything changes just on a couple plays, and that we've seen that in so many games already this year. But I mean, I've been watching football for about 15 years, and really, especially religiously, the last 10 years. And yeah, to me, momentum is one of the craziest things to pay attention to. I love paying attention to that because when it shifts really hard.
So that was definitely the word of the night for everybody that tuned in to Alabama, Georgia, especially in the first half, second half.
Yeah, people like I'm looking on Twitter and I'm calling it Twitter. People weren't even talking. I have 3 TVs, so I can kind of keep an eye on everything. Obviously, Bama was on the huge TV with the sound on and whatever. Like people weren't tweeting that like Illinois Penn State were playing a really slugfesty foot, like an old classic, like Big Ten rock fight kind of game. And
Matt Zemek was talking about Cincinnati, Texas Tech. How if it wasn't for Alabama, Georgia, people would have been talking about that.
Yeah, I have that. I had that one on. That was a fun one.
And Texas Tech won that one. So that's another time for another day.
God bless you, Scott Satterfield. So. I think the turning point of the game where it became, Bama goes up 28-0. Georgia scores, and then Bama comes right back down the field. And it was starting to look like, okay, no harm, no foul, 35-7. And then they force a turnover on downs. They stuff, I think it was Haynes in the backfield. Let me pull up. I just want to make sure. Oh, no, it was Jam Miller. My apologies. They stuff him in the backfield. Georgia gets the ball back, immediately throws another pick.
Yeah.
Bama, who had been executing beautifully all night, I know they didn't pick up a 4th and 1. Ball goes out of wasn't Williams, obviously, but it pops out of somebody's hands. Georgia picks it off. There's another stop. Georgia gets the safety. It's 30-7, or Bama gets the safety on the intentional grounding by Beck. And then Bama fumbles when they're trying to get more points into the half. It was 30-7 at half, and you could argue it should have been worse. It should have, it's a 3-possession game. Georgia's going to get 3 more possessions. It's 30-7. It should have been probably closer to 40-7.
Yeah.
If not like 44-7.
And when that happens, Zach, when you have it where you should have been up more. I've heard that phrase so many times watching games. People say, man, we should have been up more. That team should have been up more. That's normally a lot of times where the game ends up becoming close at the end because you're still giving the other team a chance because you didn't blow it open as far as you could have.
So I didn't think what was going to happen would happen. I didn't think, okay, we're eventually going to hit a point where Georgia's going to take a lead. But I was sitting here like, okay, you should be up more, but you're still up 3 possessions against a really good football team. Like there's no harm, no foul in that. Yeah, clock management. Yeah, Dave, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I saw that comment.
We'll talk about it. We're getting into the second half. So Georgia comes out and they punt. We battle and punts, and then Georgia goes 15 plays, 80 yards. Now I'm sitting here with a friend joking like, oh, now it's like perfect. You're down 3 possessions. This is the time to go on a 7-minute drive. And really, I was just like, oh, my God. But they punch it in. They get the 2-point conversion. It's 30-15. It's a 2-possession game. And I'm like, it's a 2-possession game against Georgia, who has weapons. and a Bama secondary that has been leaky this year, despite being outstanding in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
But then Bama gets a field goal, 33-15. Where was your guys' mind at when towards the end of the third quarter, and then they force a fumble?
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys think the game was over at that point? Because I certainly did. I was like, 3-possession game. They just got the ball back. It's the fourth quarter. Golden.
Honestly, if we were still leading by 2 possessions when it gets to like 5 minutes left in the game, then it's like, it's over. I'm not going to sit and go, game's over with a 30-point lead in the third quarter.
Yeah, that's fair.
I will say I was close to you, Zach, on your opinion that I thought it was almost over, but I never, even at that point, I didn't think it was completely over.
I swear I was opening up my laptop. I was starting to make banners. I haven't deleted it yet. It was like, Bama rolls Georgia. Like, what a performance by the Crimson Tide. And then I'm like, okay. And then Bama in like 2 minutes, Georgia goes down. Touchdown. They didn't get the 2-point conversion. I'm like, okay, now it's 33-21. Bama has to punt. They're not. They go like 6 and out. They got 1 first down. But they keep throwing the ball with Milroe. And then they're not gaining any traction on the outside because Georgia's a really good defense. Schumann and Kirby know what they're doing. I'm like, okay. Georgia gets the ball back. And I'm like, okay, they got to go 78 yards. There's like 7 minutes left. 47-yard bomb to Arian Smith. Boom. And this is after a 30-yard bomb to Cash Jones. And at this point now, I'm like, this is even before the touchdown. I'm like, oh, my God, we have a game.
Mm-hmm.
We have
exactly. That was the point, me too. I'm like, they're coming back.
They score 33-28, and I'm sitting back here, and I swear, and I'm here as long as you guys want to do this. But I'm like, all right, it's one of my friend's birthdays tonight. I'm supposed to meet him out. Like, I'm like, cool. Like, all right, Bama, let's get a 6-minute drive going. And at first it looked good because they converted a 3rd and 6 to Cole Adams, and I was like, all right, cool. And then it was loss of 1, incomplete. It's like, oh no. Clock stops. Georgia gets the ball back. Arian Smith again. Oh, my bad. I read a previous drive on when it was 33-21. That was the I don't know why my thing did that. That was just another drive. But then we have the 2 big bombs to Cash Jones and Arian Smith. And it's and then Carson Beck to Dylan Bell for 67 yards. Touchdown. Where was your mind at when Georgia took
was worried. I was like, oh, man, did we blow this game? This is going to be much worse than that comeback game from 2010.
I was like 6 years old during that game. I remember I was like, no. Yeah, I was not like avidly watching football as hard when I was that young, but I still remember that game. It was terrible. But yeah, when they took the lead though, I mean, I just couldn't believe that they scored on 1 play. Like that was more my mindset. Was like I thought like if Georgia's gonna take the lead here, like they're gonna burn the clock. Bama's going to run out of time and Georgia might take the lead like that. But no, they just scored on 1 play. And I know we're not at the point yet to talk about it, but then Bama does the same thing. I'm like, the knee-jerk reaction from 1 play touchdown from Georgia and then again by Bama, what was going on? My mind was blown. I couldn't even keep up. Because, like, I don't know, like, for you guys, the same thing. But when I was younger, I would just watch a game and just watch it. But, like, now that, I'm doing a lot of stuff on social media and YouTube and stuff, like, I'm scrolling Twitter. So, like, I see this play, and then I'm, like, scrolling Twitter, comment, and all this kind of stuff. And then next play, it's like you can't even keep up with all this.
That was, so, like I said, the last couple weeks and all season, there's been some coverage busts by this Alabama secondary. Just these quarterbacks they've been playing, Braden Locke and Byron Brown, who played like crap today against Tulane. TJ Fenley, who got benched by Western Kentucky. just couldn't hit the throws because they're not very good. Carson Beck had an awful first half, but he is a good college quarterback. And that dude was wide open. He was wide open. When he threw it, I was like, because of how just kind of Carson Beck had been all that. I'm like, oh, there's probably like 2 guys back there. He's just taking a shot. And I was like,
yeah, he had 100 yards and 2 interceptions from the first half.
Yeah.
And from what I'm looking at, he had 339 passing yards in the second half. All 3 passing touchdowns were in the second half. Now I'm looking at the first half stats from Jalen Milroe. He had 199 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, and the pick, that wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
I will say with Carson Beck, in my opinion, like because I've been a skeptic of him. I really have. Like a lot of people are like, oh, he's fantastic. He's an elite quarterback in college, could be in the pros. And I'm like, no, I was always a skeptic, like a big skeptic of Carson Beck, and I still am to an extent. But I do believe that his performance in the second half has somewhat quieted like some of the doubters for Carson Beck, because there's a lot of them. And I was one of the biggest, and he played really good in the second half.
I'm sure if you're Georgia, and if you had lost this and you lose this game, your season's not over.
No,
they could still win the SEC. All their aspirations are still in front of them. It would have been very easy to throw in the towel. Very easy. I know how badly they want to win this game, but it's like, all right, we came into a hornet's nest. We're getting smoked. Call off the dogs. Let's rest up. We still got to play Texas. We still got to play some of these teams. No, that second half performance was outstanding. And I know we'll talk about the final drive here in a second. But before we do that, welcome to the channel. If you're just here, subscribe, like the video, share with your friends. We'll be here. Well, not me, but these 2 guys will be here every week moving forward. Vanderbilt next week, and then South Carolina, and then the big one against Tennessee. So, or did I flip that? It is Vanderbilt next week, right?
Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Tennessee.
Okay, so I did have that in the right order. Phew.
Yeah, Tennessee scares me, honestly.
As they should, but we'll get to that in a second. Carson Beck was really good in the second half. Yeah, Justice Miller, because after the first half, I was like, it's weird to put a Heisman race in September, and I watched a lot of football today, and I'm like, okay, they won, so it's probably fair to put Travis Hunter on that board. Yeah, because that kid's unbelievable. And I was like, Colorado's not going to win enough games, but I'm like, they win like 8 games, and he's awesome. Like, and then I'm watching the first half of Bama, and I'm like, Milroe's got it. Milroe's going to be your pole position leader, and he might still be, but
what about Ryan Williams?
I think it's so like Devontae had to go for like 2,020 touchdowns to win it.
Well, I mean, you never know, because
you never know. But I just find it's so hard for a receiver to win.
If Ryan Williams
because he's a freshman, it might actually help him because it's so impressive if he has really good stats.
If he has another,
if
he has another big game like this against Tennessee,
he will.
Like, I'm not talking like 10 catches, 120 yards or whatever. I'm talking like tonight where he went for 180 or 178 or whatever. And another
177 receiving yards.
And another huge like game-changing play, which we'll talk about here in a second. Yeah, I think there's a chance.
He would be the youngest Heisman winner ever at that point. Because I don't know I've been looking for Heisman winners that are that young. I can't find any of them that were 17 years old.
Well, no, I mean, Winston won as a redshirt freshman. I think that he's the youngest. Manziel won it as a redshirt. Manziel won it as a redshirt freshman. Or was he a redshirt sophomore? No, he was freshman because he had to stay another year in school. He couldn't go to the draft after 12. Yeah, he might. I think so.
Tebow was the first sophomore ever to win a Heisman in 2007.
Yeah. I think personally, the thing that Ryan Williams would overcome is even if he puts up huge numbers, that also means Jalen Milroe's putting up huge numbers. Mm-hmm. And they would give it to Milroe before that. Unless Milroe's throwing for like 240 and Williams is going for 220. It's just so hard to win as a wide receiver.
Yeah, that year with Mac Jones, it's just because of the fact like Devontae Smith had so much of the yards, so many of the receptions and touchdowns. Like Mac Jones just didn't impress, enough. Like he didn't. Like you're also gonna have Bill Rose rushing stats too. Like Mac Jones doesn't have. He didn't have that.
Let me say, Devontae Smith absolutely deserved that Heisman.
Mm-hmm.
It was also kind of like a career thing because the man scored a winning touchdown in the national championship. I always tell it to people because I love Devontae Smith, and I'm like, this man went for 225 in the first half of a national championship, and it wasn't his biggest moment in a national championship. That dude was unbelievable. I just think it'll be hard, but if he keeps putting up games like this, he'll be in the conversation.
Oh yeah.
If you want to get annoyed, the Ryan Williams versus Jeremiah Smith debate for the next 3 years is
going to man, that's going to be
really
it's already happening.
Because Jeremiah Smith's a beast too. He just hasn't had a chance to do. He just hasn't had a chance to do something like this because Ohio State's schedule thus far has stunk.
Oh God, the non-con schedule is pitiful. It's just pitiful.
They're doing what Michigan did last year. Fair, and you know what? Fair enough. They're trying to win a national championship. But
there is something to be said about having an easier schedule. It really is. I mean, look at
when you're a team like Ohio State, because you can just out talent people. Now, if you're Ole Miss, maybe challenge yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But okay, so back to the game. Bama gets the ball back. Down. Now Georgia doesn't get the 2-point, which gave me a little bit of confidence because, okay, you get a field goal, you win. You get the field goal, you win the game. And clock management in that second half. Kalen, let's work on it, man. You got 3 weeks. South Carolina is a much better team than I think any of us thought coming into the season. But they're at home, and your offensive line's been very good this year. You should be able to – that's their strength. Their defensive line's outstanding. You should be able to hold your own. And Vanderbilt, they're feisty, but that shouldn't be a game.
No.
God bless Vandy. They're a feisty team. I know, but that shouldn't be close. You got a couple weeks to work on it. But then to half situations before you go to Knoxville.